Hello and welcome to all my drag queens who just so happen to be saving the world out there. And welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be asking the question, how would I judge RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars 9? Now this season was interesting to say the least. We will get through all of it in due time, but yeah, I actually, this season is really held up to me by like the contestants as a whole. I actually really liked this cast just in total, and I do really actually like the challenges on this season for the most part, but I do think this season does get brought down a bit by just the formatting of it, and a certain episode we'll get to later that kills all the momentum. You know which one I'm talking about. But regardless, I still did enjoy this season of RuPaul's Drag Race. And now it is time to judge it. The rules to remember, as always, are the season has to be as long as Season 9 of Drag Race All-Stars originally was, which was 12 episodes, 10 competitive episodes, the bad episode, and the finale. And the performances of the challenges need to be based off of how well someone did or how people would predict they would do. So I'm not just going to put somebody in the top when they were originally in the bottom, or vice versa, unless there is strong fan support for that being the case. But that criteria that I usually say does not really apply to this season because there are no bottom placements. If somebody was critiqued as being like the worst in the challenge on an episode of this season, I'm not just going to put them in the top because I feel like it, unless everybody else also feels like that is the case. The goal, as always, is to act as if I'm the head judge and craft the season however I can imagine, make it as fun and eventful as possible, while also being fair with my judging of the season by combining my own personal taste and what was shown to us on the show. Before we get into the meat of the video, please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy yourself. I appreciate all the comments and the likes and everything on this channel so much. This is the third of the How Would I Judge videos I have done in a row due to the way that the Drag Race seasons have been scheduled, and also incidentally how I scheduled myself. So I've been putting a good amount of work in the past few weeks. So if you would like and subscribe, I would very greatly appreciate it. Now let us get right on into it. Okay, so before we talk about episode 1 specifically, I'm going to talk about the way that I decided to deal with this season. Now for All-Star 7, in All-Star 7, it was pretty simple in comparison to this season. Every episode just had the winners get a badge unless they were blocked, with the only exceptions being the final challenge, the talent show. They got 3 badges, and at the one point in the season they were able to gift badges. And so for that season, it was easy to say, okay, was 3 extra badges given out during the season. I think it'd be interesting to choose some of the staple challenges of Drag Race: Snatch Game, the Ball, the talent show, the girl groups, and give an extra badge to the people who are in the top 2 on those, important, really like staple challenges. That's the way I decided to do it with All-Star 7, and I liked the way that I did that. But with this season, because there was more shenanigans going on, there were 2 opportunities to gift badges. There was a badge gifted out in a mini challenge. There was the double diamond. There was the talent show with 3 badges. There was a shit ton going on. Because of all of that, I decided to not overcomplicate things and just delete some of the stuff that I didn't really like as much. So for this season, the extra badges, the 2 points where they gifted the badges, I'm going to keep in. It's a charity season. I think the concept of having a couple of different points where they gift badges, I think that works. I think that's fair. I think it checks out. And it's something that was in All-Star 7. So the contestants here in All-Stars 9 should expect that it would happen at some point. So I feel like it's fair. So I decided to keep both of those instances in. And I decided to keep that 1 mini challenge star in, because I feel like that was an interesting twist they did. And, they laid it out before the mini challenge. The mini challenge was completely fair. It's a how well do you know your castmates challenge is essentially what the mini challenge is. And I think that is a very important thing. Like, how well do you know your sisters? It feels fair for me to say, hey, you get an extra star if you know your sisters real well. And so I decided to keep that in as well. I did get rid of the double diamond because I don't like it. I think it just leaves so much shit to fucking happen. I mean, literally Roxy said it in the final episode of this season. She was like, oh, if you win the talent show and you get the double diamond, I think she's talking about this to Plastique. She's like, then you'll have 14 badges. Bitch, what? Bitch, what? Like, that maths, and I hate that it maths. Like, there should be no feasible scenario on this season where somebody can get 14 badges. That feels so shitty. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. So I'm not doing it. And I do think the talent show is really important because the talent show is the challenge where it's like you literally get to create a number for yourself. It is up to you whether you succeed or you flop. And so I decided to keep an extra badge for the challenge, but just one extra badge. And so instead of the winners of the challenge getting 3 badges, they're going to get 2. So there are 4 points in the season where you can get an extra badge. Twice is being gifted, 1 for that 1 mini challenge, and an extra for winning the talent show. And that's where I'm going to leave it. That feels like the fairest way to spread it out to me and keep the twists as they kind of are, while also getting rid of the ones that I don't feel like are as fair or unbalanced. So in episode 1, we have ourselves the Girl Groups Challenge, where the contestants have to, do the Drag Queen Save the World song and create a verse and perform and yada yada yada. We all know what this is. And I pretty much kept the judging the same in this episode. I do feel like Georges and Nigeria did the best in this challenge. I know a lot of people say Plastique should have been in the top 2, and I almost did that. Plastique was my 3rd place in this challenge. But in terms of verses, I mean, literally, I remember when I was watching the episode live, well, I guess not live since it's on streaming, but you know what I mean. The instant it came out, I did not know like the spoilers of the judging of this episode or anything. When I was watching it and they finished the performances, I was like, okay, I think Nigeria and Georges were my favorites, and they were the top 2. They were my favorites right after the performance, and they were the actual top 2. So it feels the fairest and the most genuine to me to keep this the same. Over time, definitely Plastique's performance has like grown on me, and I do think it could potentially swap in as a part of the top 2. I would say potentially over Nigeria, but like it's that doesn't, that's just me speculating on my own thoughts. So no, I'm not really sure, but. I do think Plastique could have been in the top 2, but I decided against it. But she was high originally. She's going to stay that way. And originally, Miss Vanjie was high, but I decided to replace her with Roxy. I feel like Roxy did a really good job in this challenge. And she really, she did the assignment. She did the assignment really well. I think better than Vanjie. Vanjie was my 5th, though, I would say. But yeah, everything else is going to stay the same here in terms of our safe. Scott, McNeena, and Chanel completely agree with their being safe here. The top 2 of Nigeria, Paris Van Michaels, and Georges are going to lip sync $2 Million Bill by Whitney Houston, and Nigeria does win this for sure. I don't think that's any question. She really gives the Whitney Houston vibe to this. And she is going to cut Roxy Andrews. This is the first episode. I don't see why this would change at all, considering it's literally the first snipping of the season. And so, yeah, that's going to stay exactly the same. We're going to move on to episode 2. In this episode, we have ourselves the Ball Challenge. It is the Paintball, where they have to do looks, the like monochromatic looks, the art pieces look, and like the paintball look. And again, I kept these placements almost exactly the same. Originally, the top 2 were Gottmik and Plastique, and I did keep that the same here, except I think Plastique did better in the lip sync. I mean, I really feel like she gave the vibe of jumping the line more. When I was watching it, I was like, oh, Plastique won. And then they called Gottmik as the winner. I was like, what? are we sure about that? Like, Gottmik didn't do, much. She didn't do considerably worse than Plastique by any means. I would say it's like a 60-40 split. But I was fully like, oh, okay, Plastique won. Good for her. And then she didn't, and I was confused. But Plastique is going to win here, which means Plastique does win a lip sync this season. So congrats to Plastique. Spoiler alert, I think it might be the only lip sync she wins this season if I'm remembering my judging correctly. And Gottmik is going to be top 2 here. Originally in the high placements, it was Roxy and Chanel. I did decide to switch out Roxy for Nigeria. I mainly decided to switch Angeria and Roxy because I preferred Angeria's paintball look over Roxy's. Angeria had this, like, you know, kind of neon yellow chartreuse gown moment with like the sleeve, and I just liked that better than Roxy's same outfit in the category, which is like the kind of like bodysuit with the cape situation. Honestly, it was one of my least favorites of the category. Roxy's look there, I just didn't live for it. I do think Roxy did better in like the art look, and I do think they did pretty equivalent in the monochromatic look. But I think looking at the art look and the paintball look, which one do I think did better than the other, you know, more so? And I would say Angeria did better. Roxy's definitely my fifth, but Angeria edged her out for me, so she's going to be high here. And then Georges, Nina, and Miss Banji are going to keep their safe placements. Now we have to see who would Plastique choose to block. Originally, Gottmik was the one who did the blocking, and Gottmik chose to block Angeria. I think Plastique would probably do the same thing here. I mean, this is episode 2. You know, really the only things you have to go on are who won episode 1, who did the best there, and also just like who's a threat to win. And, you know, the top 2 in episode 1 were Angeria and Georges. Angeria's in the top again for this episode. I think, you know, the correct play is to say, oh, okay, here you go, Angeria. Have fun with that. I mean, this is literally what happened on All Star 7. Shay and Monet were the top 2 for the first challenge. And then in the second challenge, when Jinx had the chance to block, she was like, oh, okay, here you go, Shay. Have fun with that. So I really think Angeria and Georges are the only 2 actual options for this. But Angeria seems more likely, so I determined that she probably still would be the one that is blocked here. And we're going to move on to episode 3. Alright, in episode 3 we have ourselves the Snatch Game! And again, I really only changed one placement in this Snatch Game. So originally in the Snatch Game, Gottmik and Nina West were the top 2. Nina West playing Liberace and Gottmik playing Pal, the dog that played Lassie. And I really, like, Gottmik's performance was pretty good. Like, it was a solid Snatch Game, but I didn't think she, like, really served it to me as much as Nina, Angeria, or Chanel did. Like, I was like, okay, it's an old Hollywood dog, you know? Like, there wasn't really anything that, like, shocked me or, like, really got me going. I felt like the Liberaces were so true to character and so well performed. And Nigeria's Marla Gibbs, I was just cracking up at. And again, Gottmik did a really good job. There were a lot of jokes that I laughed at with Gottmik's, but I didn't really love it as much as I loved the other 3 that I mentioned. So I decided to move Gottmik down to the high placement, which means that one of Chanel or Angeria was going to move up to the top 2, and I decided that that was going to be Chanel. Chanel, I think, did a super good job in this. The transformation into the Liberace was amazing. And it's such a solid, good character that, you know, has a good foundation to build off of. Has a lot of jokes that are just, like, inherent to it, that, you know, you can use, but is also a good, like, you know, springboard to take off with. And I think the Liberaces overall did the best in their groups. So I'm saying the Liberaces are top 2 of Chanel and Nina. Everyone else who is in the safe placements already plays safe. I completely agree with those placements. So the top 2 of Chanel and Nina West are going to lip sync to Banana by Anita featuring Becky G. And originally Gottmik won this, but again, she's not here, so, you know, she can't win it. And Nina West had a reveal dress, which means that Chanel's winning the lip sync. Nina was too focused on this reveal dress that just wasn't serving what it needed to serve, honey. I was just like, okay, and? Why are we doing these reveals? And half the reveals are falling off before you're doing them. Why wasn't this practiced more? And also the fact that she wore this dress when, after the critiques and they were called back to the stage, episodes 1 and 2, she was always going to use this dress no matter what fucking song she got. It could have been It's All Coming Back to Me Now. She would have done this reveal dress. I was like, no. Chanel could stand on that stage and just look at the judges, say nothing. Just look at them And I'd say Chanel won. Chanel's winning. I got nothing. I got nothing for you. And so, um, Chanel has the power to block somebody now. And this is one where I was like, I kind of have not a damn clue who exactly Chanel would choose. Part of me feels like Chanel wouldn't want to really rock the boat this early and choose one of the people who won most recently, and that is Plastique or Gottmik, being the top two in the last episode. And this episode, again, Gottmik is high, did really well. I think statistically, it just feels like she would probably block Gottmik, but I could absolutely see a reasoning for her potentially blocking Plastique or Roxy as well, considering Roxy's threat level and Plastique also just being in the top. Those are the other two people that I would be like, yeah, she could definitely block them. I could see it. But I think Gottmik is the most likely option, just based off of how I assume Chanel would play the game at this point. So that is what I decided to do, and we're going to move on to episode 4. Okay, in episode 4, we had ourselves the Makeover Challenge. Now, in this makeover, they're split into the groups of 2. They're not going to change because, nobody's been eliminated. There's no reason for them to change. So the groups are Vanjie and Roxy, Georges and Plastique, Angeria and Chanel, and Gottmik and Nina. Now, I really struggled on saying, okay, am I going to change who the winners of the challenge are? Because I so deeply in my gut was like, I think Georges and Plastique murdered this challenge. And I also thought, damn, Gottmik and Nina did really fucking well in this challenge. Really, the only people who weren't in contention of winning were Angeria and Chanel for this challenge for me. Those are the only two I'm like, everyone else I think could win this challenge for me. And I was really struggling with it. The issue is, I feel like the parameters of the challenge and what they were being judged off of was so unclear. Because the way that this challenge was set up is that it's labeled as like, okay, you're split into groups of 2, and then you're getting one makeover to do for this person, and you also have to, write a short verse, like a 2-line verse, and do like a choreographed dance routine along with the person, your makeover partner. And I'm like, okay, great. So we're judging them on all these things. But it seems like in the judging, they really kind of didn't give a shit about the song and the performance. Like, they didn't care. Like, looking at the performance aspect of things, Roxy and Vanjie's person was like 3rd best out of all of them. And the makeover, I would say, in terms of like the family resemblance, I would say it was the best. But in terms of like the performance aspect of it, they were like 3rd best. Whereas with like Georges and Plastique and Gottmik and Nina, I feel like, they definitely did better in the performance aspect of it. And, weren't too far behind in the makeover portion of it. And so I'm just like, okay, how are we judging this challenge then? Because if you're saying that we're judging it as like a pure makeover challenge, then I agree, Roxy and Vanjie win. And that's what I decided with. Because if almost in the spirit of a makeover challenge, I've said before on this channel, I love a makeover challenge. Like, just as purely a makeover challenge. And, if you're saying we're adding stuff into it, I'm like, okay, I'm going to judge all of it. And then you say, no, actually, we're kind of really just judging the makeover. I'm like, okay, what the fuck? What are we doing? But I just decided to say, fucking leave it the same, because I do think they did a really good job. And if we're just going off the pure makeover aspect of it, they were my favorite. So I'm just going to leave it fucking be. So they're the top 2. My second favorite team of Georges and Plastique are high, and then everyone else is safe. In real life, everybody who was not Vanjie or Roxy got a high placement. I'm not doing that shit. In every single episode of the season, there's going to be the top 2, the 2 highs, and 4 safes. I'm not adding extra highs. It doesn't make sense to me. It kind of splits up and messes with the format that we have kind of established here, and I don't really like when they do that. So the top 2 of Miss Vanjie and Roxy Andrews are going to lip sync to Black Cat by Janet Jackson, and they both win the lip sync, and I decided to keep that as it is. I think that is fair. In terms of the top 2 lip syncs on this season, I do think this one was the closest of all of them. So I do think it's, I don't think it's rigged that they were both declared the winners. For this, I decided to keep it just because it's fun. It feels nice. And they're still going to block Angeria because I don't think enough has changed significantly for Angeria to not be blocked here. Roxy still wants to, say, "I got your back, bitch," to Angeria, that's not going to change, so she's still going to be blocked. And I forgot to mention earlier, Roxy and Vanjie would have been gifted badges at the beginning of this episode. At this point, everybody, at the beginning of this episode, the way that it starts, everybody is going to have badges except for Roxy and Vanjie. So I think it just makes sense that Nina and Chanel would gift their badges to, one of the two. Nina did gift her badge to Roxy originally, and I think Chanel is going to try and spread the love and say, here you go, Vanj, have it. So that's what I think would most likely happen. So by the end of this episode, the badge count is Roxy and Vanjie have 2, everyone else has 1, and in the first 4 episodes, every single contestant won a challenge. Literally, it just everybody got a single challenge win, which I did not intend, and I actually only noticed like right before I started filming this video that I had ended up doing that. But it was not intentional, it just kind of worked out that way. And I do think that is actually pretty interesting storyline-wise and just like content-wise. Of like first 4 episodes, this is literally anybody's game. It is anybody can do well in this season and win it. And you aren't like edging Chanel the whole season like they did originally. They're like, oh, Chanel doesn't have a badge. Oh, Chanel doesn't have a badge. And we need till fucking episode 9 to give her a badge. Nah, everybody's got a badge by episode 4, nobody's just being edged on this season. It's not happening. Okay, here in episode 5, we have ourselves the like commercial acting challenges where they're essentially like trying to advertise their like Airbnbs is basically what it is. It's very like, it's a drag race acting challenge. What is the quote? Oh yeah, it exists in the this is true though. It exists. What is the Kamala Harris quote? It exists in the context of what became before it, but it is unburdened by what has been. It does though. That's exactly what it is. It exists in the context of what came before it, but it is unburdened by what has been. Like, it is, like, we understand the acting challenge is a staple, but also understand that a lot of the time it's not great. But it shouldn't be held to the failings of what came before. But I judge this challenge pretty similarly to how it was judged originally. Really the only difference I made is that originally, every group except for Gottmik and Georges was technically in the top, with Roxy and Plastique being in the top 2, and then Chanel and Nina's group, and Angeria and Vanjie's group being high. As I stated earlier, I'm not doing more than 2 highs, and I think Nina and Chanel did better, so they're gonna be higher. And every other placement is gonna stay the same. The top 2 of Plastique and Roxy are gonna lip sync to Super Freaky Girl by Nicki Minaj, and Roxy does do better. And in this scenario, originally she cut off Gottmik. I don't think she would cut off Gottmik at this point, because Gottmik was the person who, was eligible to be cut, that A, wasn't Angeria, because she didn't want to cut Angeria twice in a row, and B, had been doing the best for the competition so far that had not been blocked yet. And that is not really the case in this timeline. Here, I actually think, up to this point, through episode 5, the person who hasn't been blocked yet, that has done the best in the competition so far, is actually Chanel. Just like stats-wise, like Chanel won episode 3, was high in episode 2, and in this episode. And so I think she's more likely to block Chanel here than Gottmik. But I could understand her blocking Gottmik as well. Those are really the only 2 options, though, that seem reasonable to me, is that she would probably either block Gottmik or Chanel. But thankfully for the turfs, like when it comes to like the snippers and it actually like affecting who is you know, getting badges and whatnot, it doesn't really matter, because I am for sure confident that she would not block the 2 people that win the next episode, so it doesn't really matter. So we're gonna move on to episode 6. In episode 6 here we have the roast challenge. Now at the beginning of this episode we do the mini challenge where the winner gets to get an extra badge, and Georges would win this mini challenge because she did originally. She's gonna get an extra badge, boobity doop, good for Georges. And I did decide to switch the judging just a smidge here again. Originally Plastique was in the top 2 and Georges was high, but I decided to switch that because I think Georges did such a good job in this challenge. I really, really fucking loved it. Georges came out in this sickening character, and I say sickening character, it's literally just her like pretending to be straight. But it's a really good, it's a really good twist and a choice for her because, you know, that was like a critique. It was like Georges, you know, needed to show more in terms of, you know, the comedy challenges and switch it up. And she said, okay, I'm gonna switch it up. And she did it next episode and did a great job with the jokes. And I think this is really just like a Georges. This is like Georges's like specific redemption episode of like, yeah, I'm a great fucking drag performer and I killed it. You know, she's gonna get 2 badges in this episode. Is gonna redeem herself from the challenge that she got eliminated on in our original season. This is gonna be an episode that's really just like an uplift Georges episode, which I really do like. I think it would be very fun. And again, having our season 14 queens here in the top 2, I think would be interesting as well. With the top 2 of Injuria and Georges, the lip sync is To Be My Lover by LaBouche. And I do think Georges could absolutely win this lip sync. I certainly she could win it. I ended up deciding to have Injuria win it just because we know how Injuria did and she did really well on this lip sync. And this is no shade to Georges. But Georges, depending on the lip sync, can sometimes have a tendency to just not serve face. And I'm afraid that, you know, potentially in this lip sync, Georges might not serve face. And it just, you know, it just be like, you know, dancing while she's just mouthing the words blank. And again, that's no shade, but that's just frankly the way it is. But I do think regardless of whoever wins the lip sync, I think most likely they snip Roxy. Injuria is obviously snipping her back because she just snipped her, and then Georges, you know, she's gonna, I think, choose like the most reasonable move that people would accept and be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And I think up to this point, I think the move that would make the most sense, I think that move would be to snip Roxy. It could also be to snip Plastique potentially, because Plastique is high in this episode, has been in the top before, has done really good on the season, been pretty consistent. So I feel like if she was in the top 2, she would snip either one of those 2. But again, neither Plastique or Roxy are going to be in the top 2 next episode, so it doesn't really matter. So we're going to have this be the judging, and we're going to move on to episode 7. In episode 7, we had ourselves the acting challenge, where they had to parody different, you know, classic, you know, kind of film, kind of gay staple kind of films, you know, like the Mommy Dearest, Valley of the Dolls, you know, those things. Originally, the top 2 were Angeria and Nina, and I do completely agree they are going to stay the top 2 for this episode. Our high placements of Gottmik and Miss Vanjie are going to stay the same, and all of our safe placements are going to stay the same. I do think this episode was judged really very fairly all around. Except the one change I am going to make is that the top 2 lip sync was to Lover Girl by Tina Marie. And I think Nina did better. I really do. Nina served me like these moves that I was not anticipating coming from her. And I really had my eyes glued to Nina the whole time I watched it. And I was like, oh, okay, Nina actually served. She served here. And so I do think that Nina would win this lip sync. here. Now, in the original season, Angeria did win this lip sync, and she was convinced by Plastique, who had 3 badges at that point, to not block Plastique and to go for somebody else. I believe. I think she blocked. Who'd she block? She blocked Gottmik. That's right. And that was a gag. In this scenario, though, Nina is winning. And Plastique has 1 less win at this point. We had 2. But I do think, looking at the field, the contestants who have more than 1 win that are eligible to be blocked are Roxy, Plastique, and Georges. Roxy's been blocked twice already. I don't think Nina's blocking Roxy. She also literally gave her a badge. And then between Georges and Plastique, I would assume that Nina would perceive Plastique as a bigger threat than Georges. Georges does have 1 more badge than Plastique, so Georges could definitely be blocked here. But I do think Nina would try to play this, strategically. It just seems like what she would most likely end up doing. And I think she would believe that Plastique is a bigger threat than Georges is, so I do think she'd block Plastique here. That is what feels most correct. And that will have a bearing on what happens next episode. In this episode, we have the Make Your Own Make Your Own Rusic design challenge. And I kept all the placements the same. I think this was judged very, very, very fairly. Roxy and Plastique had such wonderful fucking looks in this episode. Truly, were the top 2, in my opinion, without question. And then Nina and Gottmik did a really good job as well in this challenge. A very interesting and very, in terms of actual, construction, super tight look from Gottmik, and a really, a big, kind of an upset that Nina delivered by doing as well as she did in this challenge, because I don't think people expected Nina to do this well in a design challenge, but she turned it. So I completely agree with the judging. Angeria, Georges, Chanel, and Vanjie safe makes complete sense to me. So the top 2 of Plastique and Roxy are going to lip sync to No One Gets the Prize by Diana Ross. Roxy's going to win. Duh, she did better. I don't think that's. I don't think people are really questioning. I do think Plastique did a really good job as well, but I think overall, Roxy did a better job here, and also just leads to better drama because Roxy wins again. It's like, oh, okay, I'm blocking you again, Angeria. Fuck you. That's, we get that back and forth of Roxy, Angeria. That's kind of the storyline of the season as a whole, and it's a very interesting storyline. I really enjoyed it. I do think they mishandled the storyline in the finale, and kind of just with the editing of the season overall. But we'll get to that later. But yeah, really everything is staying the same. I completely agree with the judging. In episode 9, we have ourselves the Rusical Challenge, which this Rusical was so fun. I've seen a good amount of people saying that this Rusical, the Rosemary's Baby Shower Rusical, was the best Rusical of all time, and I just completely disagree. I can name 5 more Rusicals throughout Drag Race history, internationals included, that I think are better than this Rusical. But this is still a very good Rusical. The original top 2 were Georges and Chanel. And I disagree with that. I do think Chanel was my 3rd. Chanel did a really good job. Played this kind of New York, kind of, anti kind of character really well overall. But I think Vanjie had the scene stealer at the last minute, the Black China, the Oprah role in this Rusical. And she really turned it out. She did so amazing playing this, playing like the devil essentially. She played Rosemary's Baby. That's what she played, but she was dressed in red, so she looks like the devil. She did a really good job in this, and I think this is really a standout moment for her on the season. For me, I really loved it. There in this episode, for some reason, they had 3 high placements. Originally, Vanjie, Nina, and Plastique all placed high, which I just, again, I'm not doing 3 highs. That doesn't make sense. So we switched Vanjie and Chanel. Chanel goes down to the high. And originally, Roxy placed safe, which I just completely disagree with. If anybody should have been high, it should be Roxy. Roxy playing Pennywise. I think they called her Hennywise. I mean, I'm just assuming it was Hennywise, knowing Drag Race, right? If there's going to be any pun on Pennywise, it's going to be Hennywise. It was Hennywise. I just checked. It's Hennywise. I think she did such a good job with that. The makeup was so well done, hit the choreo so well. That's not to ding Nina or Plastique's performance. I just think Roxy turned it much. I don't know why I keep saying turned it, but that's how I feel. It was a very clear 4th place for me in this challenge. So she's going to be high, Angeria, Gottmik, Nina, and Plastique are safe. And the top 2, Georges and Vanjie, are going to lip sync to Love Come Home by Christine W, which, why did we choose this song? Now, I don't really know much about Christine W. I knew nothing of her before this episode. But, you know, I actually Wikipedia'd her after the episode just because I was curious, and it seems like she has a shit ton of music. So I was very confused on why this was the song that was chosen, a song that truly has like 4 lines total. I'm like, why are we doing this as a lip sync song? That doesn't make sense to me. It can be a repetitive song, but when the entire lyrical content of your song is less than a verse on any standard pop song out there, that does not make a good lip sync song. I was very confronted by this. I did not enjoy it. And I said that Georges would win this lip sync. I just think she would do a better job than Vanjie. I think this is, you know, it's a very dancey song. This is really up Georges's wheelhouse. And I think when given such like a bare bones situation as this, you know, Georges doesn't really have to emote. You know, there's nothing that can be dinged against her. So I think Georges would most likely do better here. And so she's going to get the win, but it doesn't really matter that much because nobody's getting blocked at this point, so it's not like she gets to determine anything. I just think she would do better. Now, the winners of this episode do get to gift badges to other contestants. And the way that I see this shaking out is, in this episode originally, Georges ended up gifting a badge to Chanel. Now, this was brought on by, you know, Georges said in the workroom if she had to gift a badge to anybody, it'd be Chanel, because Chanel doesn't have any badges. She's been working real hard this season. This doesn't apply as much because Chanel does have a badge up to this point. But looking at all the contestants, there are 2 contestants that each have 1 badge to their name, and that is Chanel and Gottmik. So Chanel currently stands tied for the least amount of badges. So I would assume that Georges would want to, you know, spread the love, give it to Chanel. You know, Georges has 4 badges now at this point. Chanel realistically isn't like coming up from behind and like beating her. I'm assuming Georges isn't thinking. I was just thinking like, you know, Georges is probably gonna be like, you know, Chanel has the least. I like Chanel. I'm gonna throw Chanel a badge, you know? Very, very easy, pretty clean. And I assume that Vanjie would give the badge to Gottmik, because Gottmik has only 1 badge at this point in my judging. And as we know from the season, Vanjie and Gottmik are very, very close. And so I assume that given the opportunity to gift one to the other, I don't know why Vanjie wouldn't do it. So Vanjie is going to gift the badge to Gottmik. And that is the way it's going to be, and we're going to move on to episode 10. Alright, in episode 10, we have ourselves the Lip Sync Lollapalooza Smackdown. And I love that they're finally doing this challenge with 8 people. It feels correct. It feels right. It's everything. I'm so happy they're doing it like this. Thank the fuck God. And I kept all the placements the same, so this isn't really, you know, nothing's changed here. But just to run through it for posterity's sake. Everything would, you know, go exactly the same with the picking, because, you know, we have all the same contestants. There's no reason it would change. Angeria and Gottmik lip sync to My Lovin' by En Vogue. Angeria clearly won that lip sync. She's going to move on. Miss Vanjie and Plastique lip sync to When I Grow Up by the Pussycat Dolls. I do think Vanjie did better, but it was so close. Plastique did so well in the lip sync, and it would have been really nice to see Plastique move on here and be like, yeah, I'm a lip syncer. I can do that shit. She did win a lip sync in this season, in this timeline, so, you know, that's, like, still, you know, good for her and everything. But You know, it would have been nice to see her go forward, but I do think Vanjie did better. Chanel and Nina lip sync to You Spin Me Round by Dead or Alive. Chanel does better. Again, I don't think there's any controversy there. She killed it. Then Roxy and George's lip sync to Holding Out for a Hero. I do think Roxy did better than this lip sync for sure. I do think it was kind of close, but I do think Roxy did better in giving like the words and emotion of the song and making her movements really like fit the vibe. And so completely agree with all that. Chanel and Vanjie lip sync to I'm Every Woman. Again, Chanel wins. I don't really see, or I don't see a reason for Vanjie winning. Roxy and Nigeria lip sync to Groove Is in the Heart by Delight. I just want to take a moment to say I fucking love this song so much. The first time I ever performed out and about in drag, I lip synced to this song. It was the first ever song I lip synced to an audience was Groove Is in the Heart. And so that song holds such a special place in my heart. And I love seeing it on Drag Race. Can I lip sync to it every season? That would make me really happy. I love it. And Roxy did do better, but I don't think it was a blowout by any means. And Nigeria did really good as well. And then the final lip sync to Break Free, Roxy won. Again, no question for me. I completely agree with that. Before we head into the next episode, episode 11 of the season is essentially just like everybody kind of does little mini games and has to vote for the double diamond, and you know, they have to do the mini challenge, which is making over the crew members, which doesn't mean a damn thing. It's nothing. It's a nothing episode. It's a nothing burger. You set me up for something and then it's nothing, because everything that leaves from it, that double diamond, doesn't mean shit for the season. It's not I hate it. Not fun. So instead, episode 11 is just gonna be the finale, and then episode 12 is gonna be the reunion, or vice versa, whichever order you want or prefer. That's perfectly fine, but we're gonna make one of these episodes a reunion because we need All Stars reunions. God damn it, they just never give them to us, and I don't like it. I think there should be a reunion for every season of Drag Race, and the fact that All Star seasons really don't get reunions is sad. And so we would make one of those episodes a reunion. Again, we're canceling the double diamond. Really, everything happening in that episode 11, the part 1 of the grand finale, is just we're erasing it, replacing it with a reunion. Again, either episode 11 or 12, doesn't matter. Okay, here at the finale, we have ourselves the talent show, which I love. Actually, I think this is really interesting to have the talent show as the finale. Do I think it worked particularly well in this scenario? Not really. But do I think it could work well if they tweaked it? Absolutely. I think it was interesting to have them like showcase just their drag and their talent as like the final little hurdle, and there was nothing else after it, just a final lip sync. It intrigued me, and I think it could be good, but I don't think it was good in this timeline. So this final episode was structured, I think, so badly. Like, truly, you have the talent show, and then, you have the runway, and then a critique, and then just compiling all on top of each other. It's like, okay, boom, here's who won the talent show last second, and then boom, the double diamond. And it just very much, the way that they did this, of like, you aren't gonna know who's in the top 3 until the last second. And really, I think they do that to try and build suspense, obviously, to be like, oh my god, who's gonna be in the top? Who's gonna be in the top 3? Who's it gonna be? But then it just kind of ends up leading to this like, feeling of, okay, well, nothing matters except what happens in this 5-minute span on the final episode. So I'm not anticipating anything. I'm kind of just chilling, waiting for it to happen. And for you to say what this is, and me for it to just be like, okay, sure, it actually kind of kills the suspense in a way, because I already know going into this episode that nothing is going to matter except for the final 10 minutes. And it's kind of shitty. Originally in this talent show, the top 2 were Angeria and Vanjie. And I disagree with that. I do think Angeria did so well. I think out of all the original songs that we got to see here, it was the most clever to me. It felt very Angie. It really set the tone high. I think it for all of these performances. I really enjoyed it, and so Angeria is going to be the top 2 here, and with her is going to be Plastique. Plastique did such a wonderful job here. That reveal at the beginning, I assumed there was going to be some sort of reveal, but I didn't expect it to have the sleeves just travel for a fucking mile on each side, and then it just like boom off, and then the flames out of the chest with like the marshmallows and shit. I really loved that performance. So my top 2 for this episode were Angeria and Plastique, and for posterity's sake, the high placements go to Gottmik and Vanjie. They were my 3rd and 4th favorites. And so the top 2 are going to get 2 badges because this is the talent show and it's the finale and whatever. So with that, the final badge count is Roxy and Angeria have 5, Georges and Plastique have 4, Chanel and Vanjie have 3, and Gottmik and Nina have 2. Now, since we have a top 3, this does mean that either Georges or Plastique has to be chosen to enter the top 3. And originally in All-Star 7, the way that this was done is whoever the most badges got to choose, and that was Monet. But in this scenario, Roxy and Angie are tied. And so I think it makes the most sense for Angeria to choose who gets to join the top 3. She was one of the winners of this week's challenge. That makes the most sense to me personally. It could also be a collaborative effort between Roxy and Angie, and I think that'd also be fascinating because they've literally been at each other the whole season. They've been, competing for this top spot, and then the last second for them to have to be like, okay, who do we want to join us is very interesting to me. But I do think regardless of the situation between Georges and Plastique, I think they choose Georges. And I frankly think they choose Georges because, they think they have a better chance at the crown with Georges over Plastique. Just purely and this is not to be shady in any way to Georges, but I think, in the real life scenario, Drag Race evidently didn't really want to crown Plastique, but Drag Race should want to crown Plastique. Plastique has the most followers out of any Drag Race queen ever. For them to crown Plastique would be something that would be gaggy and would just fucking boost Drag Race and Plastique to another fucking plane of existence and iconery and legend. And I think it'd be if they had the opportunity, just as a marketing and just as the way to go about it, if they have the opportunity to crown Plastique, Drag Race should absolutely crown Plastique. And I think for that reasoning, Roxy and Angeria would say, hey, Georges is joining the top 3. And also, I think, looking at the relationships on the season, I think Angeria, obviously season 14 sister, and Georges would want Georges to be in the top 3 as well, would truly desire to have Georges, just friend-wise and relationship-wise. And Roxy, we didn't really get to see super, good, relationship with either of them, but I do think she does have a slightly better relationship just based off of what we've seen with Plastique in terms of the way that it was shown on the season, but I don't think, it's like blowing anything out of the water. So I do think that Georges has a better chance to be in the top 3, so that's what I decided would most likely happen. But I do think Plastique could have entered the top 3 as well. I personally, for me, this is my judging, I would not crown either Georges or Plastique. But I do think the more likely scenario in the scenario that I've ended up creating is that Georges would be in the top 3. So, Roxy, Angeria, and Georges are going to lip sync to Rhythm Nation by Janet Jackson. Love this song. I wish it wasn't used in this format. With the split, 3-person lip sync. I would love to see this song as a standard Drag Race lip sync. It'd be so cunty. I'd love it. It'd be so amazing. But based off of the track records of the season, based off of the iconery of it all, and based off of who I think would be such a good addition to the Drag Race Hall of Fame, I think Roxy Andrews should win this season of Drag Race. Roxy killed it from front to back, won 4 challenges on the season, really slayed the whole fucking game, was one of the main characters of the season along with Angeria, and really just fucking served it, Angeria did win the season originally, which I do not think is a bad thing at all. I really like Angeria, and I'm happy she won the season, but I think Drag Race did her dirty with the way that the edit was set up. in concurrence with her win. I saw somebody post about this on Twitter, and I completely agree with what they said. Is that it seems like Drag Race here decided to do something that Survivor can chooses to do sometimes, which is this edit where you essentially have like a David versus Goliath. Angeria is the David, and Roxy is the Goliath. They're at each other's throats. These two competitors are at each other's throats doing things to try and knock down the other, snipping them or, getting rid of their allies in Survivor, the whole season. And then towards the end, the David slays the Goliath and is able to win the season. And in a show like Survivor, that is a satisfying edit. Because in Survivor, it is a social strategy game. You can be the social strategic force for the whole fucking season. But if you fail at the last second, then you could lose. And if somebody outplays you at the last second, you could be gone. And that's just the way that the game is structured and set up. And that's fair. But in Drag Race, in this version of Drag Race, it isn't as much of a social strategy game. The only strategic function of the game is who you choose to use the snippers on. And the snippers, are limited by the fact of only one person does it at each episode. And they have 6 options to choose from. There's one person they can't choose. And so in Survivor, where this David versus Goliath kind of storyline can feel like, satisfying because, they were finally able to wrangle the allies or find an advantage, get the upper hand, and, beat them. This is a show more about the art of drag and showcasing that art, through the funnel of a competition. And so it doesn't really feel like Angeria truly bested. It doesn't feel like Angeria truly slayed Goliath here. And especially it happening so last minute, literally the last 10 minutes of the season. That shit don't happen in Survivor. You never are getting that, that conclusion that at the last 10 minutes, maybe at the beginning of the finale, never at the very fucking end at the last second. And I do think if they were trying to go for the storyline that it seems like they were going for, they didn't paint Angie in a good enough light for them to make it work, that kind of David versus Goliath storyline necessitates that whoever is playing the role of the David has to have a more heroic and good edit. And the person who's playing the Goliath has to have a more negative edit, noticeably more negative. But I do think in this season with Roxy and Angeria, they have pretty similar edits of, sometimes being too much, but also being, very kind and good at what they do. They both have mixed edits, in my opinion. So essentially being like, oh, Angeria slayed this icon and Roxy at the last second, it doesn't work as well, If they wanted to do the storyline, they would have had to necessitate giving Roxy more of a villain edit, which they obviously weren't going to do because, we've seen season 5 in All Stars 2. Roxy got a villain edit on both of those seasons and was torn to shreds by the fandom. There's no way they were going to do that here. And they shouldn't do that for literally anybody. So the way that they wanted to showcase it versus how it actually happened was never going to line up. It wasn't going to be congruent with each other, I feel. And so I think the way that they really should have shown this is as Angeria and Roxy were the frontrunners and the top dogs from the very beginning, episode 1, and they're fighting back and forth throughout the whole season in order to determine who is going to be the winner. Which, I mean, is kind of, it's kind of shitty because, as a viewer, you're like, okay, I'm on episode 2, I know the winner is one of these 2 people. But I do think that really is the only way that this kind of storyline situation could have worked. And I do think the sub-storyline of this season is, everybody having their own episode that highlights their drag, and, everybody's got an episode on the top at the very least, where they're like, oh yeah, I'm doing great here. And I think the bigger one of those storylines would be, oh, Georgia's coming through with their roast episode and everything, and also Georgia's, having this relationship with Angeria that allows her to make it into the final 3 as well. I'm completely satisfied and okay with Angie winning this season, but I do think it'd be more iconic, and it feels better, for Roxy to win this season for me. Considering her storyline throughout her time on Drag Race, as a whole, and also her performance throughout the season. She does have the best track record of the season. I do feel like it is the fairest to crown Roxy as the winner of RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars 9. And here are the track records for this season. A win is 5 points, a top 2 is 4.5, a high is 4, and a safe is 3. It is a bit fuzzy because it's a long chart. I had to get a look at okay, at least, and this is the way it turned out. For all of the ones where there's a little red border on the cell there, that is means that they were blocked in that episode. And for the placements where the text is that gold color instead of the black, that is where they got an extra badge. And I guess technically there should be one at the end as well for Angeria and Plastique for winning the talent show, but that's kind of implied as well. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed yourself. Leave your thoughts, feelings, and opinions down below. As always, I will leave my Twitter handle linked down below if you want to go follow me on there. Again, thank you all so much for watching, and as always, take care. Bye-bye.